Hi everyone, it's Jaden, and today I want to talk about J.R.R. Tolkien's masterpiece, The Hobbit. Some people might say J.R.R. Tolkien is more well known for The Lord of the Rings. That's true. Honestly, I like Lord of the Rings better, but I think that The Hobbit is a masterful prequel to the entire series, and I think that it's like the best introduction that you can have to Middle Earth. Anyway, today I want to talk about a deep dive into 5 main themes. Last time I did a broad overview, and while we will be covering some of the same themes, I'm also going to be going into new themes. So it's more about a really theme-centered dive today. And so I want to start off with the main theme I see in the book, and that's the theme of greed. Whether we look from Smaug, the dragon, to Gollum, to the dwarves, I mean, like Thorin, he goes after that gold because he says, oh, it's mine, I am the heir to all of that stuff, right? Gollum, he's literally kept alive by the ring, but in such a wretched state, most of us would just not like it. He's a skeleton of his former self. Bilbo, right? Even Bilbo gets the Arkenstone and the ring, which technically is allowed because of his contract, but at the same time, like, it's kind of an act of semi-greed, I would say. So there's a lot of greed in the book. And I think that greed is apparent in a lot of the book because it's one of the most driving factors in the world. Greed is such a big theme, and therefore, and even though greed is, because it's such a complex theme at the same time, that's why in this book, it comes out in many different characters, from the Hobbit to the dwarves to the Gollum and to the dragons. So I think that greed is just a big theme because greed comes out in so many different ways. It's so many different types of people, and it's really complex. And so I think that's what J.R.R. Tolkien was just trying to say. The next theme is of courage and of heroism, and I think that this is kind of obvious, right? Bilbo acts courageously. He goes and frees the dwarves from the goblins, and he does a lot of courageous stuff, right? I think that this is kind of like the obvious theme. Most people just pick up on that one theme when they're reading the book. Courage and heroism just come out a lot. For example, courage, like Bilbo is always courageous when he goes into near the dragon, or when he's just embarking on the journey itself. Heroism is apparent in a lot of the book. They have to battle against evil forces. They have to go against a lot of bad things, and yet they continue to do that. And I think this is kind of an obvious theme, but I think that also it's a big theme. And so I think this also means that even though the world is greedy, like even the best of people are greedy. I think that's what Tolkien was trying to say with the theme of greed. I think that even though that happens, there's a difference, and that difference is kind of between stuff like courage and heroism, right? And that's what kind of makes a difference. And then second, things ended out very well for Bilbo and the dwarves, so probably courage and heroism are things that should be rewarded, which I think is true, right? If you never take risks, if you're never courageous, if you're never heroic, well, you don't have to be like heroic, but the point is that you do need to do those things. I think that the obvious theme here is that those things are good. The third to last theme is a theme of home and birthright, and what it's basically saying is that well, first of all, for home, there's a lot of different examples of home, right? Bilbo always just wants to go back to his home at the beginning, and the dwarves want to go to the their cave, right? Where they belong. And so I think that home is a very ambiguous term here. It can mean the place where you live, or it can mean the place where you're destined to go to, where you by right, like that's where you're supposed to go. And I think that those things are not only big themes, but we can kind of draw a contrast to what, for the dwarves, that's home. The place where they're going to is home. But some people would argue home is more like where Bilbo lives, right? It's where you live. I think this is a very complex theme. And it's kind of true in both fronts. I think that Tolkien was trying to like examine both types. And then second, this also just is a big theme overall, and throughout the book, people are yearning for home and birthright, and so I think that in the place where they're destined to go to, that's what I mean by birthright. And I think that that's just a big thing throughout. And there's especially that kind of contrast between which is which. The dwarves are going towards their home, which they've never gone to, they've never even seen, and Bilbo wants to go back to his home, which is where he's lived for the entirety of his life. I think that like there's a contrast there. Tolkien was trying to explore that more. Probably, I don't know like what Tolkien was actually thinking. Then there's the theme of trust. Trust, pretty obvious. We trust each other. The dwarves trust each other. They trust the Hobbit. They trust Gandalf. I think that this is like a very quick theme, but I think it also shows that if you want something, you need to trust. You need trust. You need a fellowship, and you need trust. You need courage and heroism, obviously, but on top of that, you need teamwork, which only comes from trust. Now, I think we actually see this theme more if we actually go to the Lord of the Rings, because the Lord of the Rings is where like there's actually the Fellowship of the Ring. But still, I think that the theme of trust pretty big in all of Tolkien's works, from the Fellowship of the Ring to this party of dwarves, Gandalf, and hobbits. But the final theme I have is of race. And so the thing is, if you look at Tolkien's work, it's mostly like every single type of species has like a different, is different. The hobbits, they're not adventurous. The dwarves, they're rowdy and they love gold. Dragons love gold. Goblins are bad. Like, it's like very clear cut. It's not like, oh, you know, like for example, if we were talking about like species, it's like, look, lions are always evil and rabbits always are not adventurous, right? Like, it might seem kind of weird, but obviously, you know, this is not about like this is not like literal, but instead I think that what you're trying to say is that, what he's trying to say is that like, one is influenced by the culture of where you live, or like but by the culture that you're surrounded by, but you're also influenced by yourself. Because if you think about it, race is the moral standing that you have. For example, goblins are like, let's kill, because that's their moral standing. But let's go to Bilbo. Bilbo is, he's a hobbit, so he's not adventurous. But he's also Took/Baggins, and his family is kind of a descendant from a brave hobbit, right? And so he's also kind of brave. And so this means that one is influenced by culture, but also it's influenced by like the race that they're in Middle Earth, but also by their family. Obviously, this isn't like a real theme, but I think that we can kind of chisel it down to what is influenced by the culture surrounding them, but they're also influenced by their self, right? And I think this is a very important theme. Most of the time, there's kind of a correlation. This is like obviously like this results in stereotyping. But I think that it's also kind of true that both people are influenced by culture, but also by self. And in the case of Bilbo, he kind of went over the culture. So perhaps it's saying sometimes one is unique enough so that they break out of their culture. But if we look at the goblins who are basically the same and just want to kill, perhaps some people are not strong enough to break culture. But anyway, that's like those are like some of the main themes. Those are 5 big themes. I know this was a pretty short video, but these are like the big themes that everybody sees, or one of these themes they do not see. And I think that just getting this deep dive was a really important thing in understanding The Hobbit better. I know that this was pretty short, but hopefully this taught you at least one new theme, or made you see a theme that you already knew about in a different light. Next time, we will be starting the Lord of the Rings series. I am rereading all of the books right now because I do not have a great memory of what happens in them. And I will be talking about the Lord of the Rings series, and then I'll be talking about every single book with a separate video. I'll be doing character deep dives. I'll be doing an overall theme video. And then finally, I will be also talking about the movie versus the book for both The Hobbit and like all of the other books. And currently, I am happily watching the movies for The Hobbit and telling everybody that I have to do so for my YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for making that possible. And next time, yes, I will be coming back with the Lord of the Rings series. For people who are not a big fan of Tolkien, then do not worry. I'm also going to be going into Sherlock Holmes and some Mark Twain books as well. So please look forward to that. And along the way, I will also be doing some fun Jaden's chit chat videos, which I have not done in a long time, and I'm talking about a new topic that I have researched a lot about. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.